Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations That Matter. I am your host, Kim Carpenter. And at Conversations That Matter, we have conversations with powerhouse professional women about what matters most to us. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that my co-host is also here today, Beth Rivelli. Hi, Beth.
Hey.
I am so excited to introduce you guys to Beth. She's a dear colleague. She's a member of my World Changing Women group as well. And first of all, I would just love to say, if you're watching, to please post in the comments in the chat. I believe that I'll be able to see them. So anytime along the way, if you have questions or comments, please post them in the chat. And now just let us know where you are located, where you're watching from, and say hi so we can know that you're here. All right, so Beth Rivelli is a life coach who works with women whose clock is ticking to figure out what they really want, whether that's to have a child on their own if they're single, or they're deliberating about being child-free, or they might be in a relationship and be having trouble conceiving. So what she does is she helps them have peace of mind and feel empowered no matter what's going on in their life. So she's here today in my Conversations That Matter. Talk about missed motherhood, the ticking clock, and cultural norms, which is such an important topic for, I know, so many women, especially women who have their own businesses, women that are professionals, and women that are really looking at the second half of life, right? There's a biological fact that we are unable to birth a child after a certain time in our lives. So again, hi to everyone that's here. Just hi, Audrey. It's so good to see you here. If anybody else is watching, let us know where you are located. That would be great. Okay, so Beth, tell us a little bit about your personal story, because I know that your personal journey really influenced the development of this work that you're doing with women that's so powerful.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Thank you so much for having me here today. I really, really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for all that you're doing to make World Changing Women just an amazing organization. It's been excellent to connect with everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. So my personal journey has been so much about, I think, coming through a lot of pain. And I think from a place of victimhood in my life and really seeing my body as something that was making me a victim versus the choices that I wanted to make or needed to make to move me to the other side into a new space in my life. I was at a place where I was 36, I was divorced. I chose to get out of that marriage for good reasons. And then I left and found myself in a space where I said, well, what am I going to do about the child thing? I'm not meeting anybody that it's working out with. I really want to have a child, and then at the same time, my body shut down early. So I was a strange, anomaly where at 42, I went into full menopause. So I had a lot of years where I was grieving that. And along the way, what I started to discover is that I was struggling to have a sense of belonging about where I fit in as a woman in this society. How was I going to find my way? I would never be part of the moms club. And all of my peers, all the people that I knew were starting to join that club, and I wasn't going to be a part of that club. And so there was this sense of like, where do I belong? What happens now? And I had to get to the place where I realized that I had a choice. I could be empowered in that choice. I didn't have to be a victim of my body. And to be honest, it really came from my sister really putting me at choice over and over again, and which at some points drove me crazy, to be honest. And if she's watching, she'll know what I'm talking about. But I would be all victim-y, and she would say, well, you have a choice. You can have a child if you want. And I would get so angry about it. And it took me some years to really figure out, like, I really can do this if I want, but do I want to do this? And so I chose to not have a child because I didn't want to be a single mom. I did not want to take that on in my life. And then what I found is that I actually love my life exactly as it is. Even though there were years when I wasn't sure that it would.
Yeah. So beautiful. And I know so many people can relate to this, and I can relate to this as well. And I think there is something, we'll talk a little bit about the cultural norms, But, you know, it really is an interesting phenomenon. And there's this expectation, I think, from when we're very young, as young little girls, right? I mean, I love children. I always thought that I would have 2 kids. You know, I had my life planned out in my head, you know, get married, have 2 kids, be a mom, do all the mom things. I mean, I have an amazing mom and such a great role model for that. And then, you know, I woke up at 40 and was like, wow, I'm single. And if I'm going to do this, then I have to do this alone. And like you, all my friends were having kids, and there was this, you know, thing, like this connection that they could share, and the stories and the experiences they could share, that I realize I'll never have that. Even if I decide to adopt, or, you know, there is something about going through that birthing process that I think is different.
Yes. And just really realizing the reality that you will never have that. Like, that is an experience that I will never have in my life. And having to work through that, to get through the grief of that, because like you said, exactly, when I was a kid, it was just a given, right? I had a great mom too. And I thought that's just how it's going to be. I could be a mom or I could be a career person. But in the generation I grew up in, I really thought I can actually have both, right? It was the whole Angelique commercial era. I thought that I can have
the bacon. I remember
right out of the pan, you know. And I thought that I could have all that, like it could happen. And so I was just assumed it would happen. So it's really strange when you suddenly realize, well, wait, it didn't happen. And funny, in my 20s, I actually had said I don't want kids. Like, and it took me until I was married and in a space where I was in my early 30s to finally feel like I even wanted children. Yeah. So, but it's kind of one of those things where I wasn't really taught to think about it, because you just assumed that it would happen. I don't know about everyone in every girl that's younger, a woman at this point, like how they learn about it. My experience so far in meeting younger women is that they tend to be a little bit more balanced about the whole thing than I think we are, maybe because they're more educated. I'm not sure. I'd love to hear if there are other people who are watching who are younger, like how they think about it.
Yeah, I would love to know that too. So if you're watching this, or if you're watching the replay of this, you know, post below, let us know, like, what's your thought about it. I know that, you know, growing up when Beth and I did, it was kind of like, oh, and people still, you know, ask us, we've talked about this, right? That people are like, oh, do you have kids? And I'm like, no, I don't have kids. And they're like, oh, there's just like this, you know, this
they squirm.
You know,
yeah, it's a squirmy moment where they're like, I don't know what to ask.
Yeah, I don't
now.
know
what do I do? Because that was going to be my way to connect with you. And I totally get it. We all try to find those things in conversations as ways to connect, and that's just a given. But it's even the fact that it's just a given in that way shows us how ingrained it is in our culture and is a norm, right? That people would automatically think that I would have children. The interesting thing too is that what I've found is people say, and I think Kim, you said this to me too, like there's just an automatic assumption that we're not happy. So, right. You know, like that we're half people, and that we're not happy because we don't have children. And so, because many people have said to me, I'll say, well, I don't have kids. Oh, well, you're still young. You can still have them. Like they have all this hope for me. It's going to happen, you know? Yeah. But actually, I think what I'm really all about is to really say this, we have a new norm. There are so many women I know that, like you, like me, do not have this experience of having children. And to be able to create a community where we are actually really emphasizing wholeness as ourselves, that we are enough. We don't need to have children to be enough or to be happy. And I think those of us who are in this situation know that. It's just sometimes it's not apparent to the rest of the world just based on norms.
Yeah. And I think it is, I mean, I think in some ways it's powerful for us to be in those conversations with people when that assumption comes, because I've had that too. I'm like, I'm 49. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to birth a child. Who knows? I might meet someone and date someone that has children and end up being the stepmom, or I have this dream of just like rolling right into grandma. So I'm not raising the children, but I get to spoil the grandchildren. That would be my ideal. But I think it's good to have these conversations because it's important. And I love that whole thing that you talk about with wholeness, right? Because it's not, this is just one part. It's like being a woman and making the decision not to birth a child or adopt a child, but to live a life that is so whole and complete and full. And for me, when I made the decision at 40, like, okay, I'm not going to, because I had a lot of friends who were saying to me, we have kids, we're raising kids. There's some single moms in my community, and they're like, we'll help you if you want to get pregnant, with a donor or whatever. We would help you raise the child. Like, we would help you as a community. And I really thought about that a lot, and I ultimately decided, you know what, I'm going to pivot all this energy that I've been putting into deliberating about, am I going to, try to birth a child? I said, I'm going to birth another kind of legacy for the planet that serves children, that serves hundreds, maybe even thousands of children in a way that I couldn't do if I was the mom of my one child. And so that's how I created the wholeness for myself. And I ended up going to Kenya with Cynthia Kersey and the Unstoppable Foundation and raising over $20,000 to help children have access to clean water and food and education. And I was like, wow, I can actually serve children on the planet in a bigger way by not being a mom and by focusing on building my legacy as a business, like birthing a business that serves children. And so that was kind of my healing journey, that helped me, because it is a hard thing. I think anything, when you think about, I'm not going to experience that, right? And people go through hard stuff. People go through cancer. People go through, death of a spouse, of a loved one. Like, there's so much. And I think the thing that you help people with, sorry, my phone is blowing up, is just reaching that wholeness no matter what's happening.
Exactly. And really embracing, well, first I wanted to stop for a second and just say, like, thank you for sharing all that. That's amazing. And you're totally an example of what the kind of women that I want in my community.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Beth.
Yeah. It's, it can be really hard trying to find that space for yourself. I think about, actually, it takes me to a story that I thought about that I experienced many times. So one of the things that also has contributed to me with the whole motherhood thing, and I had hesitated to kind of talk about this today, but it does contribute to my story. So when I was 23, I actually lost my mom to cancer. So every Mother's Day, like when I would go to church, every Mother's Day, it was just the double whammy, because I wasn't a mom. I didn't have a mom. And there were times I was just like, I just can't deal with this anymore. Like, I'm done. And so I think the encouraging thing I see is that even in the church I go to right now, which is really open and awesome, like, they now give flowers out to every woman on Mother's Day and not just to moms. And I just see that there's an awareness that's happening more in our world that people have not had before. There's a sensitivity to it because there are just so many of us now. And I'm not sure exactly why. I would guess it has a lot to do with career, people choosing career in a lot of ways, not thinking through that this was something we needed to start a little sooner in our lives if we really wanted it to happen. But of course, and again, however you want to choose it. Like, if I wanted to do it alone, I could have, but I didn't want to.
Yeah. And I think it's a result of actually women's empowerment and so much more choice on every level. Like, I chose to live in Japan, New York City, Canada, California. Like, I chose to move around a lot. I chose to not stay in relationships that weren't working for me.
Exactly.
Right. I chose to not get married, quickly a second. I was married when I was younger and went through divorce, and it was like, oh, I'm going to choose wisely, and I don't have to have a man as a husband to protect me or take care of me. I don't need the same things that I think our mothers and our grandmothers and great grandmothers generations needed, and it was just the norm. So the new norm is I can choose anything I want.
Right.
And so those decision points are getting pushed down further down the road, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge and say hi to Audrey, who's listening, who is sharing that she's 35 and she had an experience where wives that are part of her husband's college friend group shut her out when she did. And then as soon as she had a child, it's like, oh, now you're part of the club. And that's really painful, right? Yeah. And now one of my daughter's grandmothers doesn't have kids. She's a step grandma, but we don't distinguish the difference, and she's wonderful. Thanks for that, Audrey. That's my dream. Yeah. And then Kelly Morgan also, doesn't have children and loves that idea of we are enough. And yeah, so I think it's, this is about us being empowered and finding that ways to wholeness. So talk a little bit about how you help people with this who are going through this.
Sure. Yeah. So I do have a client who's on this path, and I do want to, can we pause for a second? Because I want to recognize the other people who have different kinds of clock ticking scenarios going on. We've been talking a lot about missed motherhood, but there are other people who, who are married. They have the relationship they want, but it's not happening for them in the way that they want it to happen. And they're trying really hard, and perhaps even at a place of choice of like, well, maybe I'm a little older and I kind of like my life the way it is. Do I still want to continue down this path of pursuing something that might be a little bit more difficult, And so that there's a choice there too, but there are so many choices around motherhood. It's not just about, do I as a single person want to or not to, or want to have one or not have one. Yeah. So I just want to acknowledge that, because there might be other people out there, and it's really easy to get caught in the missed motherhood thing.
Yeah, there's so many different scenarios. I met a woman recently who had her first child and then found out that she had cancer. And, and so, considering, do I do this again? I put this strain on my body, and, it's just like, it's such a complex thing. And I think that there's such a drive in us to create as women, and to give our fullest heart to another person, right? And I see that, the desire for that, and the struggling with how do you do that? How do you go through that? Or we have a mutual friend that went through 20 rounds of in vitro.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's just like, wow.
20.
Yeah, she was determined, and she had a daughter, so there's no rule book, there's no straight line, there's no this is how you do it guidebook out there. So
yeah, and the scenarios are as varied as there are people, right? We're all complex, and we're also different. Our pains are different, our wins are different.
Yeah.
So you asked me how I help people. So the way I do that is as life coach. I sit alongside people. So I give them the opportunity to, one, to listen, of course, and to be with them in whatever their scenario is, to listen, to put them at choice, to continue to point out the areas where they may be getting stuck, where they're not going toward the choice. We all do it, right? Like, I'm getting stuck back here and I'm not making a decision because maybe making a decision is too scary. So walking with people on that journey. I would recommend too, one of the things that I did is I read a book called Missed Motherhood, and it's written by Connie Comstock, who I actually have met in person. So she is somebody who is a teacher in something called the Hoffman process. So she was actually one of the teachers when I did it, and she's amazing. She's not doing that anymore. I think she's retired, but she and her sister were very much into the whole missed motherhood movement, so to speak. They were kind of, I guess, on the ground floor. She wrote this book, and they used to do retreats for people in that situation. So she had actually encouraged me to embrace this and move forward. Yeah, so reading that book, I would highly recommend that to people as a place to go. So yeah, so I offer, as life coach, I offer sessions, with people. We do 4 sessions a month, and we would just continue to figure out what it is you want.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to just be in the conversation. And I know, just being in your presence, Beth, like you have such a capacity for deep listening and coaching and drawing out those vulnerable areas and making it okay to look at anything. Appreciate that about you. And I know you have a retreat coming up this summer, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I have a retreat, a 3-day retreat happening in Naples, Florida from June 7th through 9th. And that is for women. I would say definitely women who are in the clock is ticking demographic, but also for other women. I want to make sure that others know that they would also be welcome. And the whole idea is that we'll look at, what is the story that we have going on? What's the story we're hanging on to? And then trying to figure out what we really want our story to be and what it is that we want to create in our lives. And I love what you said earlier, Kim, about how are you taking all that energy and how are you going to take it and harness it for doing something else in your life? I love that. I thought about the same thing of like, how do I shift that? And the retreat is a lot about that.
Great. I know that would be such a powerful experience to be in a 3-day loving container around this with other women who are going through the same thing. So you can share your experiences and kind of do some of this cultural norm busting and really create that next phase of your life. So
yeah, exactly.
So we can share information about that when that comes out. And then for people listening that might be going through this or to share this with their friends, what tips or exercises or things could you give people to do?
Yeah, one of the things that I would recommend for people.
Excuse me.
You okay?
Getting over a cold.
Okay. Oh, okay. One of the things that I would recommend is really having, leaning into your own process, whatever that might be. So, and if you don't really have a process, I highly recommend that you have one. So that might mean meditation, right? That might mean exercise. Make friends with your body, because I think when we're at this stage where it's almost like our body can become our enemy, and really making friends with it and being willing to integrate, your body into all of yourself and not let it be this thing that's existing over here separately, right? Which is easy to do. I'm very in touch with like what's going on in my body. I'm very into working out and eating healthy and, making sure that I'm keeping myself strong in addition to, the mental and the emotional and the spiritual pieces. So I highly recommend that for holistic healing, that you're paying attention to that. And so overall paying attention to your well-being, what are you doing for yourself? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you taking time for yourself, or are you finding yourself busy and doing that for whatever reason to maybe perhaps avoid something? But so really leaning into your well-being, leaning into your process to do the things for yourself that you need to do. I would highly recommend that.
I think that's such a great perspective, because I know, especially when we're against our body in any way,
Yes.
it's you, it's a part of you, so that's not going to work. And also just making ourselves a priority. I think as women, we often are the last priority, like everybody else comes before we do. And so it's such a gift to work with someone like you, where we can just give ourselves some of that love that we need to move through a challenging situation. So thank you for doing the work that you do. It's really powerful.
Thank you.
Very needed. And I know that you have a special gift for my listeners.
Yes,
I asked Beth, please, I know there's going to be people listening who could really use an opportunity to chat with you. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I am offering 5 discovery sessions. So they would be half-hour sessions that would happen starting, as of this weekend or on Monday, depending on schedules, through the end of February. There is a form that you can fill out to make me aware of the fact that you're interested in the discovery session, and we'll post, there'll be a URL that we will post. There it is. Kim just posted it, thank you. You can go to that and fill it out, and then I will contact you and we'll set up a half hour. So I can just hear about what's going on in your life and see if working together would be something that would be beneficial to you, and also maybe give you more information about the retreat.
Yeah, and so if you're watching this and this doesn't directly apply to you, but you know someone, you know a woman in your life who's struggling with this, who this could make all the difference. I know just getting on the phone with Beth for half an hour is going to be transformational. And if you know, you decide that it's a fit and want to work with her further, that will also be transformational. But we in this community, and especially with these conversations that matter, I just want to give. I want you all to be served. I want us to really look at these deeper issues that are so important for women, and for us to collectively have more healing around them. So Beth, thank you so much for your generosity of making time for these sessions on your weekends. I know you're extremely busy, and I really, really appreciate it on behalf of the whole community.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And I want to say one more thing too. Like for me, this is my passion. You know, this is my mission, is to be with women, to be there. I am the kind of person that I'm a very deep feeler, and crazy emotions don't freak me out. And I love to be there with people in that space and make space for them to be there as themselves, exactly as they are, and to then grow beyond that and to be a part of that process with them. But thank you so much for the opportunity to communicate my heart to others.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for being the first guest on our Conversations That Matter series. We're going to be doing these conversations every week inside of the World Changing Women page and community. So please check us out. I'll be posting the links for you to subscribe. And also, if you have any topics that you feel are important that you want to let me know about, or you would like me to bring on guests to discuss, send me a direct message inside of Facebook. I'd be happy to look at that. You know, this is all about us collectively coming up under women to support our highest good and our greatest success. And so it's going to take a village. It's going to take all of us coming to the table and participating in these conversations to make change happen. So thanks so much, Beth. Thanks, everybody. Have a fantastic day. See you next time.
Bye. Thank you.